3. I will call the meeting to order and call your attention to the Open Meetings Act posted here in the council chambers. If you now please join me in rising for a moment of silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, roll call, please.
Granquist, Arns,
Here.
Webb,
Here.
McCarthy, Murin,
Here.
Snorton,
Here.
Clausen,
Here.
Hildebrand. Here.
Okay, with that, I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
Then look for a motion to approve the full agenda.
I'll make a motion for the full agenda.
Second.
Motion second. If no discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
All right, that takes us to item number 12 on your council agenda under the regular agenda. Would look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5855, amending the dates and times that permissible fireworks may be discharged and limiting the dates and times that permissible fireworks may be sold. As a note, ordinance number 5855 passed on first reading as amended at the November 6th council meeting and on second reading at the November 20th council meeting.
I will offer for consideration ordinance number 5855.
Okay, motion and second, and as a reminder, there is no discussion on third reading, so I'd please ask for your vote.
Just short title.
Oh, short title, please.
An ordinance of the city of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend section 14-230 of the official city code to amend the times that permissible fireworks may be discharged, to limit the dates and times that permissible fireworks may be sold, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, now please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Arns, Webb, Murin, Clausen. Voting in opposition, Snorton and Hildebrand. We would need a fifth vote from the mayor if he
Vote.
chooses.
Yes.
With the mayor providing the fifth vote, ordinance number 5855 carries on third reading.
Okay, that takes us to item number 13. We look for a motion to consider approval to award a bid to Johnson's Plumbing of Norfolk for the installation of 2 million BTU commercial pool heaters needed for the 160,000 gallon wave pool at Aquaventure Water Park in the amount of $132,018.
I'd make the motion, Your Honor.
Second.
Motion and second. For some background on this, we'll hear from Nate Powell, our Parks and Rec Director. Good evening, Nate.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thank you. What we have here before you is the pool heater for Aquaventure. We had 2 4 million BTU heaters in there at the beginning of the year. One of them, the firewall crumbled and it burned through the wiring and the controls, and so we had to replace that one. And while we did that, we replaced it with 2 million BTU heaters for efficiency. And also, if one goes out, we can still run the other one and keep things up and running, which is really nice for us to do that. So technology has gotten better in the last decade. So this is to replace the other one before it actually goes out. We want to get ahead of it. And we will be replacing that with 2 million BTU heaters as well. This bid went out October 16th. We had bid opening on November 15th. We received 4 bids. Johnson Plumbing for $132,018. Volkman, $157,300. Pleva Mechanical, $159,871. And Merit Mechanical for $168,176. We had $180,000 budgeted, so this is well under budget at $132,018. Staff recommends awarding the bid to Johnson's Plumbing.
All right, thank you, Nate. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one. So by
replacing it with two and adding to the efficiency, is that going to prolong the life of these heaters?
It does not. I don't believe so. I believe, about 10 years is what you'll get out of them. It might prolong the life of one of the two,
Right.
they've just between the two. These ones lasted 12 years. So, and it's still a 10-year life. They have a 5-year warranty, is still expected.
Any other questions?
So, yeah, follow up on that question. So if it doesn't extend the life, then are we just buying two instead of needing one?
So we're buying two to replace one. So there's a 4 million B2 heaters, but now you can run two at this,
And
two
how did
separate heaters.
do they make a 4 million BTU one?
We looked at that. Those are special. Those were special order at the time when we looked at replacing the other one, and these ones were more efficient, is what we were told during that time. So that's why we went with it. It's just more efficient. We didn't go after a single heater. But it's more for your utility though. Each month it costs less to less gas usage is why it's more efficient.
Oh, so we'll recapture our cost.
In probably a couple $1,000s a season is what I.
How warm do we need what's the temperature of that water like?
Temperature at water, I believe we. Ryan, you go ahead. What is it?
Oh, like 82.
82 degrees. Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Nate. Any public input on this?
The water that comes in is 55 degrees, so we have to heat it from 55 to 82.
And Nate, that's just a wave pool, right? Not the other side.
The other side is already done.
That's done.
Yep.
Based on the two boilers.
We'll have to have you come forward if you want to add something.
You could sign in.
So I'm Matt with Johnson Plumbing Heating. So based on the two boilers, on replacing one boiler, answer to your question, Shane, yes, it will prolong the life of the boilers. Based on the run time, you can kind of sink that boiler down. So on a demand day, you might not require that 4 million BTU boiler. You might only require like 1.2 million or something. So you're going to increase that life expectancy. So on those colder days when you do need that extra BTU, yeah, they're both going to run. But in the long run, these new boilers too, they also do have the heat exchanger built inside it, so it protects it from any cold water shocking it, which your current boiler does not. Efficiency-wise, the one you currently have is roughly about 80% or less. You can kind of look at that for every $1 you spend in fuel, you got 20 cents going out the chimney, where the newer one's going to be about 86, 85%. So you are gaining efficiency in that to pay back in the long run. The city of Kearney does have all of these boilers I did quote and bid here, and all of their pools in the city of Kearney, and have for the last 10 years. So
Great, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Matt.
All right, any other discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 14, we'll look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5860, amending section 2-5 of the official city code to update and restructure parks and recreation fees. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion for consideration of ordinance number 5860.
Second.
Motion second, and again, for some background on this, Nate, take it away.
Mayor and council, I have a little presentation here. I've given this to the Parks and Recreation Board, and it's a conversation we haven't had yet since I've been here. As you can see, expenses continue to rise, and this last year, I think inflation hit us pretty good in Parks and Rec. And as you can see, if you look at our revenue, it's pretty steady over the years. In 2012, it did bump up because of Aquaventure. That's where we gained a significant amount of revenue. This past year, we did approve a few fees last year, and we had about a $50,000 increase in revenue over this past year. So those fees did help keep us kind of steady. On the next slide. This is the cost recovery. So this is how much we're recouping of our expenses through our revenue. And as you can see, we hit 30% when Aquaventure opened in 2012, and we dipped down below 10, down to 10% during COVID. And it continues to have a steady decline though, because if you're not raising fees, your cost recovery just continues to drop over time. We're at 17% this past year. And go ahead into the next slide. So if you were maintaining 30% cost recovery and watching your fees, you would be at that red line throughout. And the difference between the red line of 30% and 17% is $437,000 this year that we need more out of the general fund than we used to. And if you add those all up, it's almost $2.4 million we need out of the general fund to maintain our consistent drop or we're not dropping in revenue, but we're not having any increases. So that's where those numbers come in. Next slide. These are our goals, is to set fees based on cost recovery goals. We're hoping to do this through our master plan process. For instance, if we're at 20%, we want to maintain that. So we're looking at, when we raise fees, we're looking at maintaining that goal. And that means 80% of all of our other costs are funded through the general fund or other projects that are grant funded and those kinds of things. We want to bring fees up to comparable levels with other cities, and we want to simplify our fee structure, and we'll talk about that here in a moment with our tournaments. Go to the next slide. We'll just run through the fees. As you can see, these are the historical numbers, and generally we haven't increased fees. We will set them originally, but then we don't come back and look at those numbers. What we're proposing today, I'll run through these real quick. The day passes at Aquaventure be increased by $1. The group six passes will go from $220 to $250, and that would be local cities. The minimum was $250, so we wanted to kind of hit that benchmark. Our group day pass would go from $35 to $42. Each additional group pass would go from $25 to $40, and then the special event pass would be $7 instead of $5. Our pool rental, it actually just hasn't been in our fee schedule, so it has been there historically. It's been $500 for the last couple of years, but it was not in the fee schedule, so we're getting that in there. The private swim lessons are $15. Again, those that wasn't in our fee schedule, so we wanted to get that in there. The swim lessons are going from $45 to $50. And then when it comes to sports, we want to change from, rather than $40 per team or $70 per team, depending on what sport you're playing, we're going to go $10 per athlete and $20 per game, per day, per field. Not per game, it'd just be per day, per field. And that would be 4 games that are played on those fields. It'd be $15 for adults and then $50 instead of $20 at Memorial. And then we want to eliminate the tournament fees, and there's a couple reasons for this. The tournament fees are fundraisers for the associations, and we're also discouraging tournaments by doing that. So we want them to be able to have a fundraiser and to be able to pay their own bills and to keep their costs down. And also, if we encourage more tournaments, that's where we make our money. We're not making much money off of the tournaments. In fact, some clubs we weren't even charging for tournaments. And so by having extra tournaments and encouraging more to come into town, it benefits the city. It also benefits Parks and Rec because we sell concessions there, and that's where we make most of our money. And then we get down to the shelters. That's just a $10 increase across the board, with the exception of Central Park Stage. It's at $35. We thought just keeping that at $35 would be good. And then the campground, we wanted to raise it $2 more for the campsites and the RV sites and the campsites as well. If there's anybody that can't afford fees, they can call Parks and Rec office, and we would be glad to help them out. We have a process for that. Is there any questions?
So do these numbers here bring you up to 20%?
Yep, so with this,
20?
we're at 17 right now. The revenue from the schools that with the agreement that we signed this year, that'll bring us to 20. This will get us to another 1.4%. These fees in front of you, it's about $46,000.
So you'll be a 21.5% recovery?
Approximately, yep.
So would you anticipate that being good for a couple of years then? If you just want to, because your ideal is to maintain 20%, right?
Yep. It wouldn't be fee increases across the board like this. It would just, you would come back and look at all the fees on occasion and not hit them all. We did some last year and we're doing some this year. Maybe we can even split that up further, so that will help us. If 20%'s the goal that we want to keep and maintain, then this will keep us, I think, I agree with you. I think it would be there for a couple of years above 20. But we would want to come back in the next year or two and increase some fees. You want to do gradual increases instead of big jumps is what we're trying to do. Yep.
Nate, I got one on this particular that I don't see on here. What is the rental or storage fee for the paddle boats that you left year-round at Skyview? As of a week ago, they were still there, and they
Yeah.
haven't been in the water for a long time.
Yep. No, well, they're out today. So they're out today. They were removed yesterday, so we don't have a fee for that.
Care my question. Thank you.
Nate, what was the Parks and Recs board vote on this?
Yep, there's unanimous support for what we're doing here.
Any other questions? Or public input on this? Okay. Seeing and hearing none. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska to amend Section 2-5 of the official city code to update and restructure parks and recreation fees, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide with the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5860 carries on first reading.
With no opposition of the reading of ordinance 5860, I ask that we suspend the rules of second and third reading.
Okay, motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5860 carries on second and third.
Okay, that moves us to item number 15 on the council agenda. Would look for a motion to consider resolution number 2023-64, adopting the City of Norfolk Affordable Housing Action Plan.
I will offer for consideration resolution number 2023-64.
Second.
Motion and second, and to provide us some background on this, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner. Val.
All right. Thank you. This is the proposed Affordable Housing Action Plan required by the state. The state legislature passed LB 866 in 2020 and became statute 1955-05, requiring that each city in Nebraska with a population of less than 50,000 to adopt an affordable housing action plan on or before January 1st, 2024. This plan must include, and does, the following 4 items listed in statute. 1, goals for the construction of new affordable housing units, including multifamily and middle housing, with specific types and number of units, geographic location and specific actions to encourage the development of affordable housing, middle housing, and workforce housing. 2, goals for a percentage of area in the city zoned for residential use, which permits the construction of multifamily and middle housing. The 3rd is plans for the use of federal, state, and local incentives to encourage affordable housing, middle housing, and workforce housing, including the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, Local Option Municipal Economic Development Act, TIF, federal CDBG grants, density bonuses, and other non-monetary regulatory relief. And then the last fourth is update to the city zoning codes, ordinances, and regulations to incentivize affordable housing. If the city does not adopt an affordable housing plan by year end, then the statute will require the amendment of city code to allow development of middle housing in all areas in the city zoned for residential use that allows for the development of detached single-family dwellings, and then also a duplex on each lot or parcel zoned for residential use that allows for the development of detached single-family housing. By the state's definition of middle housing, this would permit duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, single-family attached, and townhomes on all single-family detached lots. Their definition of townhomes is 2 or more units in a row, but does not have a maximum, nor do any of their definitions have a minimum lot size or width or et cetera for middle housing types. The code amendment passed at the previous meeting was a good start in addressing particularly the fourth plan requirement to permit a general density in neighborhoods if people choose to build some missing middle housing in new or existing neighborhoods. The code amendment passed had restrictions in place to allow such housing, but maintain a general density and feel of the neighborhood. For the other required plan items, the plan has a goal of approximately 10% of the new housing units built be affordable in various areas of the city. 50% of the city is residentially zoned to allow middle housing or multifamily. And with the code amendment from last meeting, we do hit that number. And the last item is incentives using grants, et cetera, and other non-monetary incentives. For this, there are a few ideas and options, including having a selection of smaller housing plans available at low to no cost for owners who want to build or sell affordable housing. This will save time and money to build such a structure because the owner won't need to hire someone to design it, and will expedite the permitting process because we know that it is acceptable. Also, the city has partnered with a local nonprofit organization with the remaining local option Municipal Economic Development Act funds, who will use these funds as part of the Rural Workforce Housing Fund to provide housing for middle and workforce housing in the Norfolk jurisdiction. And people may have also heard about the city working with the village of Hayter to hopefully form the Northeast Nebraska Regional Land Bank to assist in providing affordable housing options. So that is also mentioned in the housing action plan. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
If this is adopted, you still have to come before planning and zoning to get your zoning change approved, correct?
If it does not fit in what we passed last meeting,
Right.
and you still need a different zoning, then
Okay.
yes, you would still need to do a different zoning category, yes.
Any other questions? You touched on it a little bit, but maybe talk a little bit more about, outside of you mentioning utilizing grant resources, and we've tried to be as creative and innovative about that as possible, and establishing a land bank. A lot of staff work has gone into that effort, and we'll be one of the first, if not the first, land bank established outside of Omaha. You and your staff have done some work in zoning reforms leading up to this, really to try to promote what we're seeing in terms of market demand for housing, and helping us get to more affordable housing in smaller units and higher density settings. So can you talk a little bit about that? We've adopted a tiny home zoning district. We've made it possible for ADUs, accessory dwelling units, to be developed on existing residential, and we've more recently loosened up some of our R1 requirements. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You're right, Mayor. We did adopt the tiny house district and the ADUs for anyone who has an ownership and living in a single family detached. They may put an ADU on their property for rental purposes, or like a mother-in-law unit such as that. Tiny houses, we go from anywhere from 72 square feet to 649 square feet, because even before we adopted that, anywhere that you could have a single-family detached house, we had a very minimum 650 square foot house at that point in time, which when people call and ask me about a tiny house, I ask, well, what do you consider a tiny house? And they're like 800 square feet. So they could have done that even before we changed the code. But with the code that passed last meeting, we did loosen the restrictions in R1 zoning that previously was just single-family detached only, that now permits a duplex or a 2-unit single-family attached. And that we want to fit into the neighborhoods. We actually have quite a bit of R1 zoning where you already have potentially duplexes or even triplexes that doesn't necessarily bother the neighborhood. Some neighbors don't even realize it's a duplex. And so we're trying to encourage that more affordability in amongst the existing neighborhoods, and if somebody wants to come in with a new development, that they don't have to necessarily do a zone change to an R2 like they had to before, that they could just do it in R1 zoning.
Very good, thank you. You also mentioned this too, having building plans on file. That's a new effort to make it a little bit easier for development in some circumstances. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, we have a couple on file that we have right now that is about a 1,000 to maybe 1,200 square foot house that anybody can come in and get those. If they fit, one fits on a 40-foot wide lot and the other fits on a 50-foot wide lot, that is anywhere between 40 and 50 square foot, width is what a lot of our older lots are in town. So as maybe houses live their life, they come down, we want to have that rebuilt. Somebody can buy that lot, hopefully, for a reasonable price, and can come in, and we know that this is a buildable house, and they can come in and just get that plan and move forward with it. And so it won't take much time permitting wise for it, and we want to get a few more of those too.
Very good. All right. Great work. Thank you. Any other discussion or input on this? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, resolution 2023-64 is adopted.
Item 16 would look for a motion to consider approval of a letter agreement amendment number 2 to the original engineering contract with Olson Incorporated for construction services and value engineering for the sanitary sewer replacement on Monroe Avenue to Logan Street for a time and expense basis contract not to exceed $81,500.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter agreement amendment number 2 to the original engineering contract with Olson's.
Second.
Motion and second. For some background on this, Chad Roberts, our water director. Chad.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Just a little background on this one here. On May 2nd, 2022, City Council awarded a contract with Olson's in the amount of $47,968 to look into this rehab on the sewer line there on Monroe Avenue, 36-inch sewer. At that time, we had a couple different options we were looking at. We were looking at doing a reline project originally on this one. It came back that wasn't going to be a very good process, so we looked into doing the replacement. May 1st of 2023, Council approved a contract with Retchins Construction in the amount of $1,985,515 to go ahead with this replacement of this sewer. Construction is expected to begin about the 15th of December of this year, with an anticipated construction finishing August 1st of 2024. Weather dependent, we can see this project possibly being done in about 2 months. Again, weather dependent. So the Amendment 2, what is included in the Amendment 2 here is the construction administration, construction observation reports, the SWIFT inspection, construction meetings, construction staking, the project closeout, and some value engineering. As stated earlier, this is a time and expense-based contract, and it won't exceed $81,500. Staff recommends approval. Any questions?
Thank you, Chad. Any questions?
So were these expenses expected to be a part of the original?
Yes, they were. And what we do with these contracts here, if you remember with the Reline project, we start off, they give us an estimate here of that $81,500. Again, it's based on time and expenses. So if we can come ahead and grab some of that observation within our staff, that'll reduce the cost of this $81,500.
Thank you.
How many inspections do you have to have on the stormwater pollution inspection? How many of those? Looks like an awful lot of them at $10,000. If there are 435 an inspection.
I'll have Steve answer that one there. I'm not much on stormwater, so.
Okay.
Anytime we have more than a quarter-inch event, and/or I believe it's bi-weekly. There's inspections and monitoring and documentation that goes along with that. In the process, if part of the SWIP system, the best management practices that have been installed, what you're looking at is, are those functioning the way they were intended to? And then if they're not functioning, which isn't uncommon, you have to go back and have a conversation about what do we need to do to replace those. Big picture in stormwater is you don't want silt generally moving more than about 50 feet on a construction site. You certainly don't want it getting into the street and into the curb line and down into your storm sewer system. From there it goes and gets into your ditches and fills your ditches. So your SWIP is a process throughout the construction project. It starts with a general SWIP plan prepared by the engineer that put the bid documents together, and then it's monitored throughout the construction process and changed as needed throughout that process so that it stays in compliance.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Chad. Oh.
Well, we would take on some of the daily observations. Between Dennis Watts and myself, most of the construction projects we do, we'll do the daily reports. Kind of keep in contact with the construction as it goes along. If there's some field changes and stuff that need to be done, that's when we'll engage with Olson's and have them update the blueprints and the plans and stuff, so that way we got a finished product at the end that matches the field reports and stuff. So that's where we can do a little bit of the cost savings is within our staff here, we can grab those daily reports and stuff. I think on that Reline project, Olson's was up here. Not as much as was anticipated with the original contract because a lot of that was taken care of by Dennis and I with that Reline project.
Yeah, these are, on all of our projects, these are budgeted expenses. We budget for design, we budget for construction inspection, and we budget for the actual construction. So there's three components to that. We usually do a contract up front for design, then we award a construction contract, and then we amend the design contract to add in the construction services.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Any input on this? Public input? All right. Hearing no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Item 17 would look for a motion to consider approval of a software implementation contract with Novatics LLC for the Elements Asset Management System for a grand total of $188,000.
All under consideration, software implementation.
Second.
Motion and second. For some background on this, Steve Ramus, our Public Works Director. Steve.
Mayor and Council, we started this process back in 2018. We assembled a committee of the Public Works Division heads, buildings and codes. Planning director was part of that. Our IT department is part of that. and the engineering department was also part of that with our GIS staff and engineering staff. As part of that, we spent the first portion to identify different systems. We identified 8 different potential vendors. Those were iWorks, PubWorks, Lucity, eMaintenance, CityWorks, GIS, Workshop, Beehive, and Dude Solutions were the 8 that we identified. After identifying those, we offered each one of those entities an hour with the committee to review their system, kind of do a sales talk with us. From that, we narrowed it down to 3, our top 3. Those were iWorks, Elements, and Dude Solutions. We offered each of those a 4-hour opportunity for a more in-depth review with staff and the department heads to get a better idea of exactly what the inner workings were like of those systems. Following that, we did an analysis of those. For the most part, aside from Elements or the Novotic system, everybody else consumed our GIS through an import-export type operation. Elements was the only system that actually sat on top of and directly interacted with our GIS system. So they came to the top because they would help us maintain that system as part of their implementation and process. We parked the whole process going into COVID and have been pushing the budget items forward on that ever since then. Currently, within our budget, we have a little over $212,000 budgeted for the implementation of the system, and that includes the software purchase as well as training and data migration and implementation. The iWorks software itself on an annual basis would be $36,500. The Dude Solution system was $27,000 just for the public works side. I don't remember what the buildings and code side was. It was at least double that. And then the Elements licensing was $35,500 per year. Some other things there is both the iWork and Dude Solutions were very module based, and so as you were purchasing their system, you were purchasing specific modules, and then if you would want to expand and do more with your asset management, you would have to buy more modules. With the Element system, you get the entire system, and so as we want to add and push that system to do more and more and more, there's no extra cost for that. The implementation itself is about $152,500 as part of the contract. That includes training. A large part of that is data migration, getting the system set up to pull in all of our old data. The majority of that is going to be on the buildings and code sides because they run with data for about 10 years. And then there's training costs as well in there. So we're finally ready to pull the trigger on this. They would start working on getting the software installed, working with our IT department in January, and then they would start to work with streets, fleet services, parks, and then buildings and codes. Those would be the first ones to get up and running, probably about 3 months, maybe 4 months to get them up and running, and then we would circle back and pick up water, sewer, solid waste, engineering. I think that's everybody, and they would be up implemented by around October of next year. The goal here was to get a much more robust asset management system in place so that we can start making more data-driven decisions, and as we're looking at budgets, as we're monitoring costs of different products. You know, when I'm putting plow blades on, how many miles am I getting on a plow blade? How off of a snowplow blade on a traditional steel versus some kind of a carbide tip blade. You know, we can monitor much more how much we're called out for potholes, pothole repairs as we're doing street concrete repairs. Right now, our systems are pretty dated on the street side. We're using a program called Roads and Bridges. It was written back about 1994. It's pretty basic in its functionality, and it just struggles to give us the type of reporting that you would expect to be getting from your systems in 2020. So we have sent staff as a function of the vetting on this. Once we identified elements, Will Elwell, our streets manager, has been involved in the implementation in his prior employment of a system. I can't remember what that was. So he's attended the annual user conference for Elements. Another member of his team has attended. Our GIS manager has also attended. It's an annual meeting by Elements. They get users from all over the country that come in, so you're able to sit down with other municipalities, other users, and really vet the process they went through to onboard, just as well as how is the product working for them? Did they make the right decision? Those types of questions. So staff is following that. Staff came back and they were pretty excited to be pushing this forward.
Thank you, Steve. So this is across divisions, as you mentioned, streets, utilities. Are parks assets already also included in this or not?
The Parks Department is part of this.
Okay.
They are literally pencil and paper, maybe pen and paper.
Yeah.
So this will be a big upgrade for them.
Steve, you mentioned this is an upgrade. Do these divisions pay a fee now for any kind of?
I don't think Buildings and Codes does. Theirs is a system that was built on Microsoft Excel, or not Excel, Microsoft or Access, the Access database system. They might have some Excel in there. The Water Department, again, uses they use Excel, they use Access database, and they use a product called e-maintenance. Solid Waste and WPC both use e-maintenance. So I would say if you look across all of, and then we use Roads and Bridges at the Street Department. Those probably all add up to about 15,000 for those systems. I'd have to go back and add them all up, but.
Now, it'll all be integrated into just one system. And then
Correct.
I see there's a division payout here. And so that just become a budget item for them. coming
Yeah,
next year.
then on an annual basis, the cost would be that 35.5 on an annual basis, and that would be split up by the divisions, kind of based on division usage. Water, sewer would pay more than, say, well, water, sewer probably. Yeah.
Say this system down the road, we want to switch to a different system. Is it easy to take your information with you to a new system?
It is, yes.
Steve, I had a question on the onboarding services. It says, and I probably misunderstood this, but it says you said permits and codes is included in this?
Permits and codes is included in this.
It says on page 90 of the enclosure, permits and codes is not included in this list that the project.
So number two on the contract, that connect configuration, that is permits and codes. At least that's where permits and codes is in that portion. So when you look at that 75,000, 50,000 of that roughly is buildings and codes.
Any further discussion or questions?
Under there, it says implementation service for permits and codes. I'm on page of the PDF 89. It's the actual Novotics contract. Sub-item 2. Yeah.
Steve, I know this was a long process and a lot of work went into it on your behalf and other engineering staff, so appreciate that. I know getting the right system in place that everybody felt comfortable with was an important thing on this, so it was a lot of collaboration, but ideally, bringing all this information together eliminates a lot of the guesswork, I would imagine, that had been happening and currently up to date because of some of the outdated systems that we had in asset management. So we do these sorts of things. All that to say, we do these sorts of things to create efficiencies in how we manage and maintain systems and assets.
If you think about it like our accounting system, accounting operates off of BS&A, which is a government accounting software package. And we can look at that and mine data. There's just no way to really mine the data across the division for me right now. And so it makes it difficult to make decisions, just without having that available. And then visiting with the divisions, they've expressed dissatisfaction with what their existing tools and resources are. So it really it's serving me as the Public Works Director, and it's serving them at the ground level as well.
What's the implementation timeline on something like this?
We would start in January. Buildings and codes, streets, fleet services, and parks should be operational before April. Should be in testing sometime in March, and then the other divisions would start coming on board midsummer. We should be fully implemented by October.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Any further discussion or questions or public input on this? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I would ask for your vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
Okay, and lastly, number 18 on the council agenda, a November sales tax report from Randy Gates, our city finance officer.
Our sales tax receipts are up a little over 4% compared to this same month last year. Sales tax we received was $1,013,893. And last year, for this same month, we received $974,723. So an increase of $39,170 or 4.02%.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Any questions on that, council?
I had it pulled off the consent because I think it's important that we talk about this being our largest revenue source. Every once in a while, just take it off and talk about it. What do we do with the growth, the sales tax that we didn't budget? So that extra 4%, where does that money go?
That stays in the general fund and becomes part of our beginning balance for the next fiscal year.
So Randy, what does it look like we're on track to be in terms of sales tax revenue?
What for the year, and we're 2 months into the year, we're up 6.42% compared to the prior year. Last year we had another good year of sales tax. We were up in 2023 7.29%.
7.29 last year.
Yeah.
And up 0.6% this year. Okay.
Yeah, and the year before that we were up 6.44%.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on that, council? Okay. If not, that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. We are adjourned. Have a good evening.